It was supposed to be a quiet drive home. Just two ordinary people, Betty and Barney Hill, returning from a vacation in Canada, driving through the White Mountains of New Hampshire under the stars. But somewhere along that desolate stretch of highway, everything changed. They saw a strange light in the sky, too bright, too close, and moving far too strangely to be a plane or star. Moments later, their memories fractured. They couldn't explain why hours had passed, or why their watches had stopped. What followed became the most famous alien abduction case in American history. Some dismissed them as delusional. Others called them pioneers, whistleblowers of a truth too strange for science to accept. But the Hills never backed down. What they remembered, under hypnosis, would chill even the most skeptical mind. This is the story of the couple who claimed they were taken aboard a spaceship and returned forever changed. And whether you believe it or not, their journey marked the beginning of a question that still haunts humanity. Are we alone out here? It was just after 10:30 p.m. on September 19th, 1961. Betty and Barney Hill were driving south on Route 3 through rural New Hampshire. They were alone, or so they thought. Betty noticed a strange light in the sky, too bright for a star, too silent for a plane. As it moved erratically, both Betty and Barney grew uneasy. They pulled the car over near Indian Head to get a better look with binoculars. What they saw changed everything. A craft, silent and hovering, moved closer. It was shaped like a flattened disc, with rows of windows and flashing multicolored lights. Inside, they claimed, humanoid figures stared directly at them. One figure, according to Barney, was the leader, who seemed to be communicating with the others. Barney, gripped by an intense, unnatural fear, shouted, "They're going to capture us!" He jumped back into the car and sped off. That's when the buzzing began.
A series of mechanical buzzing sounds filled the car, and suddenly, Betty and Barney's memories went dark. When they awoke, they had traveled 35 miles without recalling how. Their watches had stopped. Time had vanished. Back home, they were disoriented. Their clothes were oddly torn. Betty began experiencing vivid nightmares of being taken aboard a spacecraft. Barney, too, was plagued with anxiety and confusion. Something had happened that night. Something they couldn't explain. And when hypnosis therapy was later used to unlock their memories, the true horror would be revealed. What exactly happened in those missing hours, and who, or what, was inside that craft above the White Mountains? 2 years after that eerie night in New Hampshire, Betty and Barney Hill sat nervously in Dr. Benjamin Simon's office. A respected psychiatrist, Dr. Simon specialized in trauma and used hypnosis to treat anxiety disorders. The Hills weren't seeking fame. They were seeking peace. Betty suffered from vivid, recurring nightmares, alien figures, a sterile room, and a strange examination table. Barney, on the other hand, experienced overwhelming anxiety, disturbing dreams, and an unshakable sense of fear. Both knew something had happened. They just couldn't remember it. Dr. Simon began separate hypnosis sessions for Betty and Barney. What surfaced shocked him, and later, the world. Under hypnosis, Barney described being led up a ramp into a metallic spacecraft by non-human beings with large eyes and grayish skin. He recalled being paralyzed with fear as strange instruments were used to examine his body. One figure he called the Examiner performed what Barney believed was a neurological test. He remembered cold hands and a suction-like device touching his skin. Betty's sessions revealed a similar yet more detailed experience. She described being shown a star map by one of the beings, possibly depicting their home system. The aliens, she said, communicated through telepathy, calm, clinical, and curious. They took hair samples, clipped her nails, and inserted a long needle into her navel, a moment she described with pain and terror. Dr. Simon remained cautious. He believed the Hills believed their story, but he wasn't convinced it proved alien abduction.
Still, the vivid consistency of their independent accounts and the emotional distress they exhibited was undeniable. Their testimony became one of the earliest and most famous abduction cases in UFO history. It raised a chilling question. If what they remembered was true, how many others simply forgot? Once Betty and Barney Hill's story became public, the media pounced. What started as private therapy sessions turned into national headlines. In 1965, the Boston Traveler broke the story, igniting a firestorm of attention that neither the Hills nor Dr. Simon had anticipated. Radio shows, TV interviews, magazine articles, Betty and Barney were thrust into the spotlight. Some praised their bravery, others called it a hoax. Overnight, they became the reluctant faces of alien abduction. The couple insisted they hadn't sought fame. Their goal had always been healing, not headlines. But their detailed, synchronized recollections under hypnosis fascinated researchers and skeptics alike. For the public, this was the first time abduction had been described in such clinical, emotional, and vivid terms. Scientists were divided. Some psychologists saw the case as a form of shared delusion, possibly influenced by stress or repressed trauma. Others pointed to Betty's star map, which she claimed matched the Zeta Reticuli system, sparking even more debate in the growing UFO community. For the Hills, life would never return to normal. They were invited to speak at conferences, consulted for UFO investigations, and became part of American folklore. Still, they lived with the emotional scars of that night in 1961 and the weight of public scrutiny. Their story inspired books, documentaries, and even a TV movie. But more than anything, it opened a door. If a quiet couple from New Hampshire could claim such an encounter, who else might be too afraid to speak up? The story of Betty and Barney Hill has lived on for more than 6 decades, not just because of what they claimed, but because of what it represents: the collision between belief and doubt. To UFO believers, the Hills are pioneers, the first widely publicized case of alien abduction. The level of detail they provided under hypnosis, the physical symptoms they experienced afterward, and the emotional weight of their testimony are seen as compelling evidence that something extraordinary truly happened that night. Betty's star map, drawn under hypnosis and later matched by some researchers to a distant star system, is often cited as proof she couldn't have invented it. But skeptics see things differently. To them, the Hills' account is the product of stress, sleep deprivation, or even media influence. Barney, an African-American man in an interracial marriage during a tense time in U.S. history, may have been under enormous psychological pressure. Psychologists suggest the hypnosis sessions may have unintentionally reinforced imagined experiences. Some point to science fiction stories of the era as a possible influence. Yet despite the criticism, no one has proven the Hills were lying. They didn't profit significantly from their story, and they consistently stuck to their version of events until their deaths. Whether their tale was fact or fiction, the Hills gave voice to a phenomenon that would shape the next half-century of UFO lore. And in that tension, between belief and skepticism, the mystery continues to thrive. Betty and Barney Hill's story didn't just launch headlines, it sparked a cultural shift. Before them, alien abduction was science fiction. After them, it became a new chapter in the modern mythos of humanity reaching into the stars, and something reaching back. Their encounter, whether literal truth or a profound psychological experience, left a legacy that outlived them both. It inspired books, documentaries, scientific debates, and even inspired other reported abduction cases that followed a strikingly similar pattern. In many ways, their account became the blueprint for what we now recognize as the alien abduction phenomenon. More than 60 years later, the questions they raised still echo in the minds of believers, skeptics, and scientists alike. What happened that night in 1961? Was it contact with a higher intelligence, or a deep dive into the unexplored corners of human consciousness? We may never know for sure. But one thing is certain. Betty and Barney Hill's journey, a drive beneath the stars that changed their lives forever, left a mark on our collective imagination. And whether viewed as a cosmic warning or a cry for understanding, their legacy continues to remind us that the universe is far more mysterious than we can ever fully grasp.